Dr. Kim Mina stared at the screen in front of her. The numbers made no sense. She had been studying the readings for 3 days now, checking and rechecking every calculation. The electromagnetic patterns were unlike anything she had seen before. The research station on Kepler 440b was quiet at this hour. Most of the colonists were sleeping or working the night shift in the mining tunnels. Mina preferred the silence. It helped her think. She pushed her chair back from the desk and rubbed her tired eyes. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she took another sip anyway. The bitter taste reminded her of home on Earth, where her mother would scold her for working too late. "Still here, Mina?" Dr. Park Jun walked into the laboratory, carrying a steaming cup of tea. His hair was messy from sleep, and his lab coat was wrinkled. "The readings are getting stronger," Mina said, pointing at the monitor. "Look at this. Pattern from the gas giant in the outer system. Something is moving through the upper atmosphere." June leaned over her shoulder to look at the screen. He squinted at the data, then shook his head. "This looks like sensor noise to me. When was the last time we calibrated the deep space array?" 2 weeks ago. Everything checked out fine." Mina pulled up another screen showing the same readings from different angles. "This is not noise, June. Something big is out there." "Ow! Big are we talking about?" June sat down in the chair next to her. Mina hesitated. She had run the calculations dozens of times, but the answer still seemed impossible. Based on the electromagnetic signature, it would have to be at least 50 kilometers long. June laughed and nearly spilled his tea. 50 kilometers? Mina, that's larger than most asteroids. Nothing biological could survive at that size in space. That's what I thought too. But look at the movement patterns. She showed him a series of tracking charts. It's not following any orbital mechanics. It's changing direction, accelerating, even stopping completely at times. Sensor malfunction, June said firmly. Or maybe it's debris from an old mining operation. The corporations were blasting asteroids out here for decades before we arrived. Mina felt frustration building in her chest. As a xenobiologist, she had spent years studying life in extreme environments. She knew the difference between mechanical, debris, and living organisms. This is not debris, June. The electromagnetic patterns are too complex, too organized. Then what do you think it is? June's voice had a tone that suggested he was humoring her. I think it's alive. The next morning, Administrator Li Wu called for the weekly colony meeting. The main hall was packed with tired miners, technicians, and scientists. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and industrial lubricants. Li stood at the front of the room, his official uniform crisp despite the early hour. We have several items to discuss today. First, the mining quotas for next month. Back in the war. Water recycling system needs repairs. And third, Dr. Kim has some observations to share. Mina felt every eye in the room turn to her. She had prepared a presentation, but suddenly her throat felt dry. She stood up and walked to the front of the room. Thank you, Administrator Lee. ID. She activated the wall display and showed the electromagnetic readings. The past week, I'd been tracking unusual activity in the outer system. There appears to be a large object moving through the atmosphere of the gas giant. Han Seok, one of the senior miners, raised his hand. How large are we talking about, Doc? Based on the data, approximately 50 kilometers in length. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. Choyuna, who worked in the processing plant, called out, "That's impossible. Nothing lives in space that big." That's what I thought initially. Mina continued. But the movement pattern suggests this is not a natural object. It's changing course, accelerating, and emitting structured electromagnetic pulses. Structured how? Asked Yang Day from the communications station. Mina switched to a different screen showing wave patterns. The pulses follow mathematical sequences. They're not random. Something is controlling them. The room erupted in chatter. Lee held up his hand for silence. Dr. Kim, what exactly are you suggesting? Mina took a deep breath. I believe we're dealing with a living entity, something that has adapted to survive in the vacuum of space. Something that might be intelligent. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Han Seok started laughing. A space monster? Are you serious? It's not a monster, Mina said quickly. It's a form of life we've never encountered before. Come on, Doc, Choyuna said with a grin. You've been reading too many science fiction stories. There's no such thing as giant space creatures. More laughter filled the room. Mina felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She had expected skepticism, but not outright mockery. Namq, the colony's security chief, stood up. Even if there was some kind of large object out there, our orbital defense systems can handle it. We've got enough firepower to crack an asteroid. This isn't about firepower, Mina said. If I'm right, we need to consider the possibility of first contact with an alien intelligence. First contact. Han Seok was still chuckling, with a flying whale. The laughter grew louder. Mina looked around the room, seeing doubt and amusement. On every face, only one person wasn't laughing. Shinhai, the young engineer who maintained the colony's power systems, was staring at the display with a worried expression. Administrator Lee raised his hand again. Thank you, Dr. Kim. We'll keep monitoring the situation. If there are any real threats to the colony, our defense systems will handle them. Administrator, please, Mina said. Recommend we send a probe to investigate. If I'm wrong, we'll know for certain. If I'm right, we need to be prepared. Prepared for what? To fight a space monster? To communicate with it? Mina said. To understand what it wants? What it wants. Choi Yuna laughed again. Maybe it wants to eat us all up. The meeting dissolved into jokes and laughter. Mina gathered her data files and walked back to her seat, her face burning with humiliation. She had spent her career studying life in impossible places, but no one would listen to her now. As the meeting ended and people filed out, Shinhai approached her. Dr. Kim, I wanted to ask you something. Mina looked up hopefully. Yes, the power fluctuations we've been having lately. The ones we blamed on solar flares. When did they start? Mina thought for a moment. About a week ago, the same time I first detected the electromagnetic anomalies. Shinhai nodded slowly. I think you might be onto something. What patterns in our power grid match what you showed us today? You believe me? I believe in being careful, Shinhai said. If there's even a small chance you're right, we should take it seriously. That night, Mina sat alone in her laboratory, staring at the latest readings. The electromagnetic signatures were getting stronger. Whatever was out there, it was getting closer. She thought about her grandmother's stories from old Korea tales, of dragons that lived in the sky and came down to judge the worthy. Foolish myths, she had always thought. But now, watching the patterns on her screen, she wondered if the myths might contain some truth. The entity in the outer system was moving again, its electromagnetic song growing louder with each passing hour. Soon, very soon, everyone would see that she had been right all along. But by then it might be too late to prepare for what was coming. 3 weeks had passed since the colony meeting. Dr. Kim Mina continued her work in silence, watching the electromagnetic readings grow stronger each day. The other colonists had forgotten about her warnings, but she had not forgotten about the entity moving through space. Yang Dae was working his usual shift in the communications center. When the long-range sensors started screaming, the alarms filled the small room with flashing red lights and harsh beeping sounds. He had never heard anything like it before. What the hell is that? He muttered, rushing to the main console. The screen showed an object approaching the system at incredible speed. At first, it looked like a large asteroid, but the readings made no sense. Yang ran the scan 3 times before he believed what he was seeing. The object was 53 kilometers long and moving in a straight line toward their planet. But asteroids did not move in straight lines. They followed curved paths around stars and planets. Administrator Lee to communications. Yang spoke into his radio. We have a situation here. Within minutes, the communications center was crowded with people. Administrator Li Wu stood behind Yang's chair, staring at the screen with wide eyes. Nam Q, the security chief, was checking his weapon systems. Dr. Park Jun looked confused and worried. How fast is it moving? Li asked. About 12% of light speed, Yang replied. But that's not the weird part. What? This. He replayed the sensor data from the past hour. The object had changed direction twice, slowing down and speeding. Up without any visible cause? Mechanical failure in the sensors? June suggested hopefully. All systems are working fine, Yang said. I've checked everything twice. Nam-Q stepped forward. Could it be a ship? Maybe from another colony? No human ship moves like that, Lee said. And look at the size. It's bigger than our entire colony. Yang switched to a different display. There's something else. It's sending out signals. He played the audio through the speakers. Strange pulses filled the room, rising and falling in complex patterns. That's not random, June said, his voice barely a whisper. Those are mathematical sequences. The room fell silent except for the alien sounds coming from the speakers. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Where's Dr. Kim? Lee asked suddenly. Yang looked around the room. She's not here? Should I call her? Yes, get her down here right now. 10 minutes later, Mina burst into the communications center. Her hair was messy, and she was still wearing her lab coat. What's happening? Look at the screen, Lee said. Pointing to the display, Mina studied the data for a long moment. Her face went pale. It's real. It's actually real. What is it? Nam-Q demanded. It's what I've been trying to tell you about, Mina said.
Oh, yeah.
The entity I detected in the outer system, it's coming here. The object continued to approach over the next 6 hours. As it got closer, the sensors revealed more details. The surface was not smooth like a rock or metal ship. It had patterns that looked almost like scales or armor plates. Strange lights pulsed along its length in waves of blue and green. Beautiful, Shinhai whispered. She had joined the group in the communications center, along with most of the other colonists. No one wanted to be alone when the unknown visitor arrived. It's terrifying, Han, Siok corrected. That thing could crush our entire colony without even noticing. The entity slowed down as it entered the planet's orbit. It moved with grace that seemed impossible for something so large. The lights on its surface grew brighter, and the electromagnetic signals became more complex. It's trying to communicate, Yang said. The patterns are getting more sophisticated. As fast as she could write, the signals are mathematical progressions. Prime numbers, Fibonacci sequences, geometric patterns. This is definitely intelligent. What does it want? Choi Yuna asked from the back of the room. I don't know, Mina admitted. But the fact that it's using mathematics suggests it wants to establish communication. The entity settled into a stable orbit around the planet. It was close enough now that they could see it with the naked eye through the observation windows. It looked like a massive crystal hanging in space, refracting starlight into rainbow patterns. My God, Dr. Seo-bin said. It's alive. Everyone could see it now. The surface was not made of metal or rock, pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. The lights that ran along its length were not mechanical displays, but bioluminescent organs, like deep-sea creatures on Earth. How is it possible? June asked. Can something that large survive in space? Life finds a way, Mina said. On Earth we found organisms living in the deepest ocean trenches, in boiling hot springs, even in radioactive waste. Why not in space? The entity's presence began to affect the colony in unexpected ways. The electromagnetic pulses interfered with some of their equipment, but they also seemed to have effects on the colonists themselves. Dr. Seo-bin was the first to notice the changes. People are reporting strange dreams, she told the group. Dreams about flying through space, visiting other worlds. Shared dreams, added Shin-Hai. My roommate and I had the same dream last night. We were floating in a vast ocean of stars, and something was singing to us. Yang nodded. I heard it too. It's like whale songs, but more complex. Mina felt a chill run down her spine. It's communicating with us directly, through our minds. That's impossible, Nam-Q said. But he looked uncertain. Is it? Mina asked. We know that some animals on Earth can sense electromagnetic fields. Maybe this creature can project thoughts the same way it projects radio signals. Over the following days, more colonists reported the dreams. They described flying through space, seeing distant galaxies, and feeling a vast intelligence observing them. The dreams were always peaceful, filled with wonder rather than fear. But the entity's presence also brought practical problems. The electromagnetic interference was getting stronger. Power systems flickered, Communications equipment malfunctioned, and the mining robot stopped working properly. "We need to make contact," Mina said during an emergency meeting. "If we can. Communicate with it. Maybe we can understand what it wants." "What if it wants to hurt us?" Hansiok asked. "Then we're already dead," Mina replied. "Something that large could destroy our colony without effort. The fact that it hasn't suggests it's not hostile." Administrator Lee looked tired and worried. "How do we communicate with something like that?" "We start simple," Mina said. "Mathematics is universal. We send back the same patterns it's sending to us, but with our own variations. Show it, we understand." Yang worked for hours to modify the communications array. When he was ready, he sent out a simple mathematical sequence. The response came back immediately, but it was more complex than before. "It's teaching us," Mina realized. "It's showing us more advanced mathematics." The exchange continued for days. The entity would send patterns, and the colonists would respond with their own variations. Slowly, they began to understand that they were not just communicating with an animal, but with an intelligence that was ancient and vast. "It's been traveling between stars for thousands of years," Mina explained to the gathered colonists. "Maybe millions of years. It's seen civilizations rise and fall. It's learned from them." "What does it want from us?" Choi Yuna asked. Mina looked at the latest communication patterns on her screen. "I think it wants to learn about us, to understand what kind of species we are." "And then what?" Namkyu asked. "Then it will decide if we're worth keeping alive." The room fell silent. Outside the windows, the massive entity continued its slow orbit around their planet, its lights pulsing in patterns that no one yet understood. But everyone knew that their lives now depended on making the right impression on something older, and more powerful than they could imagine. First contact had begun. The morning sky was wrong. Administrator Li Wu stood at the observation window, watching clouds form in patterns that defied all logic. The weather system had been normal just hours ago, but now massive storm clouds spiraled across the entire continent. "The atmospheric pressure is dropping fast," Shinhai reported from her station. "Wind speeds are reaching dangerous levels." Through the thick glass, Lee could see the entity hanging in the sky like a second moon. It had descended from orbit during the night and now floated just above the atmosphere. Its massive form seemed to pull at the air itself, creating the unnatural storm patterns. "How long until the storms hit us?" Lee asked. 2 hours, maybe less," Shinhai replied. "The winds are already at hurricane strength and getting stronger." Lee activated the colony-wide communication system. "All personnel, this is Administrator. Lee, we are implementing emergency protocols immediately. Secure all equipment and prepare for severe weather conditions." In the communications center, Zhang De was frantically trying to contact Earth. The emergency transmitter crackled with static, but no clear signal could get through the electromagnetic interference. "The entity is jamming everything," he reported. To Namkyu. "I can't even reach the mining stations on the other side of the planet." Namkyu checked his weapons systems for the third time that morning. "What about the orbital defense platforms?" "Offline," Yang said. "The electromagnetic pulses are too strong. Most of our systems are failing." Dr. Kim Mina burst into the room, her face pale with excitement and fear. "It's descending. The entity is coming down into the atmosphere." "What does that mean?" Namkyu demanded. "I don't know," Mina admitted. "But something this large entering our atmosphere will cause massive weather disruption. We need to evacuate the colony." "Evacuate to where?" Lee asked as he joined them. "Our ships won't function in this electromagnetic field." Outside, the wind began to howl. The colony's buildings were designed to withstand the planet's normal weather, but nothing could have prepared them for this. The entity's presence was turning the entire atmosphere into a weapon. Dr. Siobin ran in from the medical center. "We have a problem. The shared dreams are getting stronger. Half the colonists are experiencing waking visions now." "What kind of visions?" Mina asked. "They're seeing other worlds, other civilizations, but they're also seeing destruction. Planets being torn apart by storms just like this one." Lee felt ice in his stomach. "You're saying this thing has done this before?" "I think it's showing us what happened to other species that failed some kind of test," Siobin replied. The first wind blast hit the colony like a giant fist. The buildings shook, and several windows cracked under the pressure. Emergency lights flickered on as the main power grid struggled to compensate. Hull breach in Section 7, Shinhai reported. The mining equipment storage is taking heavy damage. Han Seok's voice crackled over the radio from the mining tunnels. We're trapped. Down here, the elevator shaft is blocked by debris. How many people are with you? Lee asked. 12, including Choi Yuna and her team. Lee looked around the room at the worried faces. We need to get them out of there. Not in this storm, Nam-Kyu said. We'll lose anyone who goes outside. Dr. Park Jun had been quiet during the crisis, but now he spoke up. What if we try to communicate with it? Tell it we surrender. Surrender to what? Mina asked. Still don't know what it wants. The entity's electromagnetic signals had changed. Instead of the mathematical patterns they had been exchanging, the pulses now came in rapid bursts that seemed almost angry. It's not just communicating anymore, Yang observed. It's scanning us. It's deep scans of our buildings, our equipment, even our bodies. Looking for what? Lee asked. I think it's evaluating us, Mina said slowly. Testing our technology, our society, our response to crisis. Another massive wind blast shook the colony. This time the lights went out completely. Emergency power kicked in, but it was clear the main systems were failing.
Oh.
This is a test, Mina continued. It's seeing how we react under pressure. Well, we're failing, Nam-Kyu said bitterly. Half our people are trapped, our defenses are down, and we can't even communicate with the outside world. The mining tunnels, Han Seok was trying to keep his team calm. The tunnels were safer than the surface, but they were also completely cut off from the rest of the colony. The walls are holding, he reported to Choi Yuna. But if this keeps up, we might be buried down here. Choi Yuna was examining the rock walls with her geological scanner. Han, look at this. The electromagnetic pulses are affecting the mineral structure. The rocks are changing. Changing how? They're becoming more crystalline. Like the entity is somehow transforming the planet's geology. Back in the communications center, the situation was getting worse. The entity had descended even lower, and its presence was causing electrical storms across the entire continent. Right. We need to try something different, Mina said. Instead of trying to fight it or hide from it, we need to show it who we are. What do you mean? Lee asked. We need to demonstrate human values, show it that we're worth preserving. How do we do that when we're trapped in a storm? Nam-Kyu asked. Mina looked at the rescue teams preparing to go after the trapped miners. We show it that we don't abandon our people, even when it's dangerous. Shinhai stepped forward. I can modify the power suits to work in this electromagnetic field. It won't be easy, but I can get a team to the mining tunnels. That's suicide, Nam-Kyu said. The winds will tear you apart. Maybe, Shinhai replied, but we have to try. Dr. Seobin joined the conversation. The visions are showing us something else now. Not just destruction, but also cooperation. Think some civilizations passed the test. What did they do differently? Lee asked. They worked together. Even when it seemed hopeless, they helped each other. The entity's signals changed again. The angry pulses became more complex, almost like it was watching their conversation. It's listening, Yang realized. It understands our language. Then let's talk to it directly, Mina said. She walked to the communications console and activated the main transmitter. Entity, we know you can hear us. We don't know what you want, but we're willing to learn. The response came immediately, not through the radio, but through the shared consciousness that the entity had established with the colonists. Images flooded their minds, showing the history of the galaxy, civilizations rising and falling, and always the same test. It's ancient, Mina whispered. Older than our entire species. It's been traveling between stars for millions of years, testing, developing civilizations. Testing them for what? Lee asked. No, to see if they deserve to survive. To see if they can evolve beyond their primitive instincts. The storm was reaching its peak. The wind was so strong that even the reinforced buildings were starting to crack. But the colonists were no longer focused on their own survival. Shinhai had finished modifying the power suits. I need volunteers for the rescue mission. Every person in the room stepped forward. We go together, Lee said. All of us. The entity will see this, Mina added. It will see that humans don't leave their people behind. MQ checked his modified weapons. This thing wants to judge. Us. Let's give it something to judge. As the rescue team prepared to face the storm, the entity's presence seemed to shift. The electromagnetic pulses became more rhythmic, almost like it was waiting to see what the humans would do. This is it, Mina said as they prepared to leave the safety of the communications center. This is the moment that determines our species. The future. The test had begun, and humanity's response would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the hearts of the colonists, something stronger than fear was growing. They would face this challenge together, as humans had always faced the unknown. The entity watched and waited. Its ancient intelligence focused on these small creatures who dared to venture into the storm to save their companions. The outcome would determine not just their survival, but their worthiness to join the greater community of civilized species among the stars. Dr. Kim Mina stood at the edge of the colony's main airlock watching the rescue team prepare for their mission. The modified power suits hummed with energy as Shinhai made final adjustments to the electromagnetic shielding. The suits will protect you from the worst of the interference, Shinhai explained to the volunteers. But they won't last more than 2 hours in this storm. Administrator Li Wu checked his helmet seals one more time. 2 hours should be enough to reach the mining tunnels and bring everyone back. Through the reinforced windows, they could see the entity floating above them like a living mountain. Its crystalline surface pulsed with colors that seemed to respond to their movements and conversations. It's watching us, Namq observed. Every move we make. Good, Mina said. It's see what humans do for each other. The airlock opened and the rescue team stepped into the storm. The wind hit them like a physical blow, but the modified suits held against the electromagnetic interference. They could hear each other through the radio, though the signal was weak and full of static. Stay together, Lee commanded.
Follow
the guide ropes to the mining entrance. As they fought their way through the howling wind, something unexpected happened. The entity's electromagnetic pulses began to change, becoming more rhythmic and purposeful. The colonists who had stayed behind watched in amazement as the creature's signals seemed to respond to the rescue team's progress. It's not just watching, Young Dae realized. It's participating somehow. Dr. Seo Bin was monitoring the shared consciousness effects. The visions are changing. Instead of showing destruction, they're showing cooperation. It's other species working together during their tests. The rescue team reached the mining tunnels after an hour of brutal struggle. The entrance was partially blocked by debris, but they could hear voices from inside. Han Suik, can you hear us? Lee called through the radio. We're here, came the reply. 12 people, all alive, but the tunnel is starting to collapse, working. Together, the rescue team cleared the debris while the entity's presence grew stronger overhead. The electromagnetic pulses were so intense now that they could feel them in their bones. Something's happening, Shinhai reported. The entity is doing something to the storm. Above them, the massive creature was descending even lower. Its crystalline surface was so close now that they could see individual segments, each one the size of a building. But instead of crushing them, the entity was somehow reducing the wind speed around the mining entrance. It's helping us, Mina whispered in amazement. One by one, the trapped miners emerged from the tunnels. Han Suok came first, followed by Choi Yuna and her team. They were tired and scared, but unharmed. We saw things down there, Choi Yuna reported. Visions of other worlds, other civilizations, and we saw you coming to get us before you even arrived. Entity showed you? Lee asked. Not showed. We felt it. Like it was testing whether we believed you would come for us. The return journey to the colony was easier. The entity had calmed the storm around them, creating a pocket of relatively safe air. The effort of rescuing their people had cost them. Several colonists had been injured, and their resources were running low. Back in the communications center, The situation was becoming clearer. The entity's signals were more complex now, carrying what appeared to be actual information, rather than just mathematical patterns. "It's trying to teach us something," Yang observed. "Look at these patterns. They're not just numbers anymore." Mina studied the data flowing across her screens. "It's showing us star maps of the locations of other civilizations that passed the test, and the ones that failed," Dr. Park Jun asked. The weight of that revelation settled on everyone in the room. They were not just being tested for their own survival, but for their right to exist as a species. Elder Kong Su, the colony's oldest resident, had been quiet during the crisis. Now he spoke up from his corner chair. "My grandmother used to tell stories about spirits from the stars. Beings who would come to judge whether people were worthy of the sky? Just stories," June said dismissively. "Maybe not," Kong Su replied. "She said they came before, long ago. That they tested the people of old Earth and found them wanting. That's why humans were confined to one world for so long." Mina looked at the old man with new interest. "What else did the story say? That the sky spirits would return when humans finally reached the stars? That they would test us again, and this time the test would be final." The entity's presence was changing again. Electromagnetic pulses were becoming more organized, more purposeful. It was as if the creature was preparing for something. Getting ready to judge us, Mina realized. The rescue mission was just the beginning. Over the next few days, the entity began to communicate more directly. Instead of visions and electromagnetic pulses, it projected thoughts and images directly into the minds of the colonists. The experience was overwhelming at first, but gradually they learned to understand the alien intelligence. The entity called itself by a concept that roughly translated to Keeper of the Deep. It had traveled between stars for millions of years, serving as both guardian and judge of developing civilizations. Its purpose was to ensure that only species capable of true cooperation and wisdom were allowed to spread across the galaxy. "Why?" Mina asked during one of their mental conversations. "Why do you get to decide who lives and who dies?" The entity's response came as a flood of images and emotions. It showed her the history of the galaxy, civilizations that had spread across the stars only to destroy themselves and others through warfare and greed. It showed her species that had failed the test and consumed entire star systems in their hunger for resources. "Someone must choose," the entity communicated. "Someone must ensure that the darkness does not spread, and if we fail your test." Entity showed her images of dead worlds, empty star systems where civilizations had once thrived. The message was clear. "But we saved our people," Mina protested. "We worked together during the crisis." "That was only the beginning," the entity replied. "The true test is yet to come." The entity began to prepare for the next phase of its evaluation. Its crystalline surface started to glow brighter, and new structures emerged from its body. Smaller creatures, each one the size of a small building, detached from the main entity and began to orbit the planet. "It's deploying something," Yang reported. "Dozens of smaller entities." "Not entities," Mina corrected, as she watched the alien creatures through the observation windows. "Judges, it's setting up a formal evaluation." The colonists gathered in the main hall, knowing that their next actions would determine not just their own fate, but the fate of their entire species. The entity had tested their courage and cooperation. Now it would test something deeper. "What do you think it wants to see?" Lee asked. Mina looked around at the faces of her fellow colonists. People who had risked their lives to save others, who had worked together despite their differences, who had faced the unknown with courage rather than hatred. "I think it wants to see if we can be trusted with the galaxy," she said. "If we can grow beyond our primitive instincts and become something worthy of the stars." The final test was about to begin. The smaller entities descended from the main creature like seeds falling from a giant tree. Each one was the size of a small building, with surfaces that gleamed like polished metal. They positioned themselves around the colony, creating a perfect circle that enclosed the human settlement. Dr. Kim Mina watched from the observation deck as the entities began to glow with soft blue light. The electromagnetic interference that had been disrupting their system suddenly stopped, and the colonies. Power grid stabilized. It's giving us our technology back, Shinhai reported from the engineering station. All systems are online and functioning normally. Administrator Li Wu looked suspicious. Oh, why would it do that? Because the real test is beginning, Mina replied. It wants to see what we do when we have choices. The entity's mental voice reached all the colonists at once, speaking directly into their minds with thoughts that felt both ancient and infinitely patient. People of Earth, the entity communicated. You have shown courage in the face of danger. You have demonstrated loyalty to your companions. But these are simple virtues that many species possess. The true test of wisdom lies ahead. Images flooded their minds, showing them a vision of the galaxy filled with countless civilizations. Some were peaceful and cooperative, working together to explore the cosmos and share knowledge. Others were aggressive and destructive, consuming resources and destroying anyone who stood in their way. Your species stands at a crossroads, the entity continued. You have the potential for great wisdom or great destruction. The choice is yours to make. The smaller entities began to project holographic displays around the colony. Each display showed a different scenario. It's a different choice that humanity would have to make. The first display showed Earth itself, struggling with pollution and overcrowding. The entity offered advanced technology that could solve these problems instantly, but at a cost. Humanity would have to accept permanent oversight from the galactic community. Independence or guidance, the entity explained. Choose wisely. Second display showed other human colonies scattered across the galaxy. Some were thriving, others were struggling. The entity offered to share the locations of resource worlds that could support millions of people, but these worlds were already inhabited by primitive species. Expansion or preservation, the entity said. What will you choose? The third display showed advanced weapons technology that could make humanity the dominant military force in the galaxy. The entity explained that many species had chosen this path, believing that strength would protect them from all threats. Power or peace, the entity offered. The choice that defines civilizations. The colonists gathered in the main hall to discuss their responses. The weight of speaking for all humanity hung heavy on their shoulders. We can't make these decisions for our entire species, Dr. Park Jun protested. We're just one small colony. We're the ones here, Mina replied. We're the ones being tested. Hans Seok stood up from his seat. I say we tell them we want to be independent. Humans have always made their own choices. And look where that's gotten us, Choi Yuna countered. Wars, pollution, inequality. Maybe we do need guidance from more advanced civilizations. The debate continued for hours. Numq argued for the weapons technology, believing that humanity needed to be strong to survive in a dangerous galaxy. Dr. Seobin advocated for the resource worlds, saying that human expansion was inevitable, and they should do it with alien approval. Elder Kong Su listened to the arguments with growing concern. Finally, he stood up and spoke in his quiet voice. You're all thinking like politicians, he said. But this isn't about politics. It's about who we are as people. What do you mean? Lee asked. The entity isn't testing our policies, Kong Su explained. It's testing our character. Do we choose based on fear or hope? Do we think only of ourselves or of others? Mina suddenly understood it's not about the choices themselves. It's about how we make them. She walked to the center of the hall and addressed her fellow colonists. We're approaching this wrong. We're trying to find the right answer, but maybe there isn't one. Maybe the test is about showing that we can think beyond our immediate needs. Then what do we tell it? Shinhai asked. We tell it the truth, Mina said. We tell it that we're not ready to make these decisions for all humanity. We tell it that we need time to grow, to learn, to become better than we are. Yang Dae looked skeptical. You think it will accept that? That we're not ready for the big decisions? I think it will respect honesty more than false confidence, Mina replied. The colonists voted, and the decision was unanimous. They would not choose any of the offered paths. Instead, they would ask for time and guidance to help humanity mature into a species worthy of the galaxy. When they communicated their decision to the entity, the response was immediate and surprising. The ancient intelligence seemed pleased. Rather than disappointed, you have chosen wisdom over power, the entity communicated. You have chosen growth over immediate gratification. This is rare among young species. Ah! The holographic displays changed, showing new scenarios. These were not choices between different paths, but challenges that required cooperation and creativity to solve. Now we test your ability to work together, the entity explained. Not just with your own kind, but with others unlike yourselves. The smaller entities began to project creatures that looked like living light. These beings communicated through color and sound, and they had problems that needed solving. Some were trapped in energy fields, others were lost in spatial anomalies. And still others were sick with diseases that only cooperative effort could cure. Save them, the entity instructed. Work with them. Show us that humanity can be a positive force in the galaxy. The colonists threw themselves into the challenges. Shinhai worked with the light beings to understand their technology. Yang De learned to communicate through color patterns. Dr. Sobin studied the alien diseases and found ways to treat them using both human and alien knowledge. Imnari, the colony's mechanic, made a breakthrough when she realized that the alien technology was based on biological principles rather than mechanical ones. By learning to work with living systems instead of trying to control them, she was able to solve problems that had seemed impossible. It's about integration, she explained to the others, not domination. We don't force solutions on the aliens. We work with them to find answers that help everyone. As the colonists successfully completed each challenge, the entity's evaluation became more complex. It tested their ability to share resources fairly, to resolve conflicts peacefully, and to make decisions that benefited everyone rather than just themselves. The final challenge was the most difficult. The entity showed them a scenario where helping the alien beings would require significant sacrifice from the human colonists. They would have to give up some of their own resources and accept alien refugees into their colony. This is the true test, the entity explained. Will you help others even when it costs you something? Will you welcome the different and the strange? The colonists didn't hesitate. They opened their colony to the alien refugees, shared their resources, and worked together to find solutions that benefited everyone. Han Seok gave up his private quarters to house alien families. Choi Yuna shared her food supplies without complaint. Nam Q put down his weapons and learned to communicate with beings he couldn't understand. As the test progressed, something remarkable happened. The cooperation between humans and aliens led to innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. The light beings taught the humans about energy manipulation. While the humans shared their problem-solving techniques and emotional resilience, we're stronger together, Mina realized. That's what the entity wanted us to understand. The ancient intelligence watched it all with what seemed like satisfaction. After days of challenges and cooperation, it finally communicated its verdict. Have passed the first trial, it said. You have shown that humanity has the potential for wisdom and cooperation. But this is only the beginning. The real test comes when you return to your people and share what you have learned. The entity began to withdraw its smaller judges, but not before leaving behind some of the light beings who had chosen to stay with the human colonists. We will watch your progress, the entity promised, and we will return to test you again. When your species is ready for the next level of evaluation, as the massive creature prepared to leave, Mina felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. Humanity had passed the test, but the real work was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the entity's departure. The colony on Kepler 44b had changed in ways that no one could have imagined. Where once there had been only human buildings, now there were structures that glowed with soft light housing. The alien refugees who had chosen to stay, Dr. Kim Mina, walked through the integrated settlement, marveling at how different everything had become. The light beings, who called themselves the Sung, had brought technologies that seemed like magic, but were actually based on biological principles that Imnari was still learning to understand. The water purification system is working perfectly, Shinhai reported during the morning briefing. The Sung biotechnology is 3 times more efficient than our old mechanical systems. Administrator Li Wu nodded approvingly. And the food production? Up 40%, Han Seok replied. Turns out the Sung know how to grow plants that can thrive in soil that we thought was barren. The integration had not been easy at first. The colonists had struggled to adapt to living alongside beings who communicated through color and sound rather than words. But gradually, they had learned to work together, and the results were remarkable. Choi Yuna had become the colony's first interspecies coordinator, helping to resolve conflicts between humans and Sung. The biggest challenges aren't technical, she explained to the group. They're cultural. You have to learn to think differently about privacy, work schedules, and social interaction. But it's working, Dr. Esiopin added. The psychological benefits of cooperation are incredible. Depression and anxiety rates are down, productivity is up, and people report feeling more hopeful about the future. Young Dae had perhaps changed the most of all. Once focused only on communications technology, he had learned to understand the Sung's color-based language and had become the colony's first human-alien translator. The Sung have been sharing their knowledge freely, he reported. They've taught us about energy manipulation, biological computing, and sustainable resource management. But they've also been learning from us. What are they learning? Lee asked. Human creativity and problem-solving approaches, Yang replied. They're amazed by our ability to find solutions through trial and error. Their species tends to think in very organized patterns, but humans are more willing to take risks and try new approaches. The colony's success had not gone unnoticed. Ships from Earth and other human colonies had begun arriving, bringing scientists, diplomats, curious colonists who wanted to see the first integrated human-alien community. Dr. Park Jun had initially been skeptical of the changes, but even he had to admit that the results were impressive. The biotechnology they've shared with us could revolutionize human space travel, he told the visiting delegation from Earth. Their energy systems are completely sustainable and actually improve the environment rather than damaging it. The real transformation was not in technology or efficiency. It was in the way the colonists thought about their place in the universe. Elder Kong Su spent his days talking with the Sung elders, sharing stories and wisdom across the species barrier. They have legends too, he told Mina one evening, stories about the sky spirits who judge civilizations. But in their version, the spirits are teachers, not judges. Maybe that's what the entity really was, Mina mused. Not a judge, but a teacher showing us what we could become. The changes went beyond the colony itself. The success of the integration had inspired other human settlements to open their doors to alien refugees and to seek out cooperative relationships with non-human species. Nam Q had traded his weapons for agricultural tools and had become one of the colony's most effective farmers. I used to think security meant being stronger than everyone else, he told new arrivals. Now I know it means being connected to everyone else. The Sung had also changed through their contact with humans. They had learned to appreciate human art, music, and literature. Some had even begun creating hybrid art forms that combined human creativity with Sung energy manipulation. They're teaching us to think beyond our own species, Mina observed during one of her regular reports to Earth. And we're teaching them to think beyond their traditional patterns. Both species are becoming something new. The transformation was not limited to the colony. Reports from across human space told of similar changes. Trade relationships with alien species were replacing military standoffs. Cooperative research projects were solving problems that had seemed impossible. Human approach to space exploration was evolving from conquest to collaboration. We're becoming a galactic species, Lee told the colony during a celebration of their first year of integration. Not through domination, but through cooperation. The entity had not returned, but its presence was felt in other ways. Colonies throughout human space reported visits from other species, testing and evaluating humanity's progress. Most of these encounters were peaceful, with the aliens offering knowledge and assistance rather than threats. It's like we've been accepted into a community, Shinhai explained to a visiting reporter. The entity was testing whether we were ready to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Imnari had become the colony's expert on biological technology, working closely with the Sung to develop new innovations. The key is integration, she explained to the engineering students who came to study their methods. We don't try to force our technology on living systems. We work with them to find solutions that benefit everyone. The colonists had also learned to think differently about resources and expansion. Instead of seeking to exploit new worlds, they focused on sustainable development and cooperation with existing ecosystems. We're not conquerors anymore, Hanzok told his mining crew. We're partners. We take what we need, but we also give back. The changes were not without challenges. Some humans resented the need to share resources with alien species. Others worried about losing human culture and identity. But the benefits of cooperation were becoming too obvious to ignore. Haven't lost our humanity, Mina assured the critics. We've expanded it. We've learned to be human on a galactic scale. The entity's test had been passed, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity was learning to take its place in a community of civilizations that spanned the galaxy. As Mina stood in the colony's central plaza, watching human children playing with young Sung, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The species that had once laughed at her warnings about monsters in the sky had learned to embrace the unknown with wonder rather than fear. We're ready for whatever comes next, she told herself, ready to be part of something bigger than ourselves. The stars above held infinite possibilities, and for the first time in human history, humanity was prepared to meet them as partners rather than conquerors. The test had been passed, but the real adventure was just beginning. In the distance, sensors detected new ships approaching the system, but instead of preparing for defense, the colonists prepared for welcome. They had learned that the unknown was not something to fear, but something to embrace. The entity had taught them well. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as masters of the galaxy, but as valued members of a community that had been waiting for them to be ready. The future stretched out before them, full of wonder and possibility, and they were ready to face it together as one species among many, working toward a common goal of wisdom, cooperation, and growth. The monster in the sky had become their teacher, and humanity had learned the most important lesson of all, that true strength comes not from power over others, but from the willingness to work with others for the benefit of all. The stars were calling. Humanity was finally ready to answer.